Do not underestimate what it takes to learn how to lift well. You have to learn the skill before you can start training to achieve a body that is dangerous and defined. Get in, losers, we're going lifting. You know lifting heavy is not going to make you bulky. You know that you need to lift heavy if your goal is to build muscle. Let's say you have a program, like a solid program by a coach that you trust. You know that the program is built in order to build muscle, but you think that it's too easy. Most likely, it's not that the program is too easy. It's that you are not choosing to challenge yourself. And that's what we're going to dig into today. So in order to build muscle, hypertrophy, 8 to 12 rep range, that's our sweet spot. Minimum sets, 3 to 6. And doing them as straight sets is going to give you plenty of time under tension to really challenge those tissues. So what do I mean by straight sets? I mean, let's say you're going to do squats and Bulgarian split squats and a deadlift in a workout. You do the first exercise, you do all of your squats, and then you do all of your Bulgarian split squats, and then you do all of your deadlifts. You're not going through each of them circuit style. So we're not going to squat, Bulgarian split squat, deadlift, repeat. We're going to knock out all of those squats. Then we're going to knock out all of the second exercise. And then we're going to knock out all of the next exercise. That is absolutely the play if the goal is building muscle. Straight sets, like freaking key, especially if you have the time to get all of those sets in. So we want 8 to 12 rep range. We want a minimum of 3, if not a max of 6 sets. Okay, you with me so far? So if you are selecting a weight that is too light, you can do more than 12 reps. That's not going to be what allows you to build the muscle. If you select something too heavy where you can't get 8 reps, that is not the play in order to build muscle. We need to find a weight that is challenging in that 8 to 12 rep range, okay? With that, you need to have good form. And this is the place where people start to look crazy, or people start to make comments like, well, this isn't hard enough. So listen, before we can focus in on the intensity to make sure you are actually building muscle, you have to have good form. And if you cannot take the time to learn good form, then this goal of building muscle, it's not going to happen. And I don't say that to sound mean or anything. I'm telling you that for the reality check that you might need. When you have a really good program, if you say something like, this isn't hard enough, it's probably not the program. It's probably how you are going about the exercises or the weights that you are picking. So that's what we need to talk about. I have a video that went viral this past year where it shows the difference between why somebody is building muscle, why somebody is getting stronger, and why somebody might not be. And it's these little nuances to different exercises that can make something feel a lot harder or a lot easier. Now, I need you to understand that our bodies, they are looking for the easy way out. So if there is an easier way to compensate through an exercise, that's what your body is going to pick to do, unless you know otherwise, unless you know, okay, this is what I need to do in order to get better results. Have you ever seen 2 people squat? So look at this with me for a second. Just look at the squat, or I mean, you can look at all of it, but I want to go back to the squat one. In the first clip, you see me breaking 90, and in the second one, I don't go down as low. Now listen, some people are not going to be able to go down as low. Maybe there's an injury, maybe there is something that is restricting their mobility. If you want to build muscle, you need to take advantage of your full range of motion. So if I had somebody who came to me, and I've had people who have come to me who can't get that deep in their squat, we then take the time to figure out, well, why can't you get that deep in your squat? Is there something that we can work on from a soft tissue or a mobility standpoint so that we can access that range of motion so that when you do squat, you are able to build up the muscles in your legs and your glutes? I've had people who have made comments on this video and they're just like, but I can't get that low. Okay, why can't you get that low? Okay, we need to work on that before we can focus in on building up your legs more. Because I'm going to tell you this right now. If you do not take advantage of that full range of motion, you doing half range of motion, the exercise is not going to feel as challenging. And for those of you who do not have any mobility challenges, you can get pretty low. If you are shortchanging the range of motion and you are not going as low as you and I both know you can, that is going to be one of those reasons as to why you might think, well, this isn't really that hard, because you're not training that full range. And there's other things when it comes to doing something like a squat as to why it might be feeling easier or harder. So if you're not taking advantage of the full range of motion you have access to, that could be why it's feeling easier. If you're speeding through it, that could make it feel a lot easier. So typically when we're doing something like a squat or a deadlift, a bent over row, a strict press, any of these slower movements, any of these grinds. So when we're working with kettlebells, we have grinds, which are slower exercises, and then ballistics. Ballistics are the snatch, the swing, the clean, things that have to happen very fast. When we're working on these grinds, if you move too fast through them, we're not creating enough time under tension. So your muscles are not having to work at an intensity that is going to allow these muscle fibers to break down. When you're trying to build muscle, we need to fatigue these areas of the body intensely enough that we can rebuild them with the support of our recovery, with the support of our nutrition. Otherwise, we are kind of wasting our time in terms of going after the concept of building more muscle. So if you're going really fast, if it's taking you, let's say, okay, 8 to 12 rep range, that should take on average, and I would say, that should take on average 30 to 45 seconds to do those reps. Let's call it 3 seconds down, 3 seconds up, 3 seconds down, 3 seconds up. If you're rushing through this, that could be a reason why it's not feeling that challenging. You slow an exercise like that down, it's going to feel a lot harder. Or something further you can do is adding in something like a pause. So think 3 counts down, pause, 1 Mississippi, come back up. That can make it a lot harder as well. Something else that's very common is people will get to the bottom of their squat and they'll kind of bounce. It's almost as if their body is just dropping into it and then trying to use momentum to spring themselves back up. That makes it a lot easier as well. And that could be why you are thinking, this isn't very challenging. So when it comes to things like getting the most out of your exercises so that it is challenging enough to create change, you have to be really honest with yourself. Are you moving at your full range of motion? Are you doing the right tempo? Are you adding a pause if need be? Because, sometimes we think, oh, I just need to go heavier. But sometimes our body isn't ready to go heavier. Like, this has happened to me. This has happened to plenty of my clients where it's like, my legs probably could handle more weight, but I don't yet have the upper body strength to support bigger weights up at the top. So my options then turn into, I could put the weights up on a platform and then pick them up, or I have to now take a season to train my upper body in a way where that is a bigger primary focus so that I can rack something heavier. Does that make sense? But I guarantee if you have a smart program that was created by a coach that you trust and it is in alignment with the goal you're going after, like if you are picking a program that is all about, increasing mobility, but in your head, you're just like, I'm supposed to be building muscle. Like that is not in alignment. If you want to build muscle, you need a program that is in alignment with building muscle. So when all of those pieces fit together and you are moving at the right rate, you are in the right alignment, you're doing all of those basic things right, then we have to look and see, well, is the weight actually heavy enough? And if you are, able to do more reps than what is listed in the rep range, then yeah, you got to pick something heavier. I've had several clients over the years where they've made comments to me like, this really isn't that hard. And then I'll ask them, well, can we look at this together the next time that we're in session? And they show me, and I'm thinking to myself, well, no wonder you don't think this is hard. You're not taking advantage of your full range of motion. And that's come up with all different types of exercises, not just a squat, not just grinds. I mean, I see this with the kettlebell swing a lot. And the kettlebell swing is one of those exercises that does have a lot going on. And it looks very simple, but for people to learn how to do it well, it takes time. And a lot of people tend to underestimate how much time and mental bandwidth goes into learning how to do it correctly. But if you do something like a kettlebell swing and you are shortchanging how far back you are setting your hips at the bottom, you're barely going to feel your legs doing any of the work. Whereas if you get deep enough where your elbows are making contact with your upper inner thighs and your shoulders are still staying higher than your hips, your legs are going to have to work so much harder. And as the weight begins to increase, it's just like, oh my goodness, like my legs are cooking like crazy. But the other thing that happens as the weight gets heavier is it's going to be harder to maintain that same type of range of motion. So when I have people making comments like, well, this doesn't feel that hard, and I ask them, show me what it looks like, and I see them shortchanging the range of motion, I'm like, well, that's why. It's not the protocol. It's not even the weight selection. Like, you actually pick something that should be challenging, but your focus is no longer on that range of motion, and that's why it feels easy. Sometimes something else that I see with people in the swing is they're telling me, this feels really easy, and I'm like, okay, well, let's check out what's going on with your arms. And they're like T-Rexing the kettlebell instead of fully extending that lever length that is their arms. And that is why it is feeling significantly easier, because they're decreasing that lever length and it does not require as much effort on their body. Again, your body is really smart. Your body is going to want to figure out ways to make something easier. So you have to be really honest with yourself. And this is where recording can come into play. Record yourself. Notice, what does this look like? If you are working with a coach, I find most coaches, they are going to give you video to mimic your movements after. And if your video looks very different than whoever you are learning from, there's a good chance that maybe that could be why you are not feeling challenged with whatever it is you are doing, because your form is off from what they've been demonstrating to you. The other thing to kind of keep in mind is, when we're working in that 8 to 12 rep range, it's not just the body that sometimes wants to figure out how to make something easier. The mind also wants to make things easier. And when you are working in that rep range, I find most people, they don't want to have to hit 12 reps. They want to stop as soon as they can. And then it's this mental game that you have to start playing where it's like, I can do more. I'm not going to do less. I'm going to push myself. I'm going to get more because that's what I need in order to achieve this goal. Anytime I'm in a new training program and the focus is on building or maintaining muscle, and I'm doing exercises in that 8 to 12 rep range, when I'm initially doing my assessment, so for me, it's typically like the first 1 to 3 weeks where I'm trying to figure out, these are the weights I should be using based on how this is all set up. And, I'm guesstimating what kind of weights to use. It's not an exact science. There's like a little bit of a learning curve anytime you go into a new program to figure out, well, how heavy does this need to be so that I am challenged and not to the point where it feels like I can barely, sit on the toilet. Like, we're not looking for that. But once I figure out what those weights need to be, I really like to get to a point where it's like 8 reps. So that over the course of, this 12-week program I have, maybe I get to 12 by the end. Maybe I get to 12 towards the, midway mark, and I'm able to bump up towards the very end of the program. And one of the biggest challenges at that point isn't necessarily, anything physical. It turns into something that is very mental. And what you have to understand is when it comes to building muscle, nobody cares how much the weight is. Nobody cares how much the weight is. There have been times people have asked me, what's your 1 rep max for this? Or, what's the heaviest weight you can snatch for like a few reps? Nobody cares what you can do in an 8 to 12 rep range. Like even me, it's never anything that crosses my mind. Your body, your muscles, in order to achieve the aesthetic side of the goal, building muscle or maintaining muscle, fat loss, like all in that world, it all comes down to, are you working in the appropriate rep range where you feel challenged? Number one, you have good form. You have that full range. You have the right tempo. You have the right alignment. You have the right muscles firing. 2, is it intense enough where you're actually challenged? When you're working in that rep range, your last couple of reps, it should feel like, fuck this. I can do it, but I don't want to do it. And then it becomes this conversation where maybe you do get to the point where it's like, all right, I can do 10 reps and I really have to psych myself up to hit rep 11 and 12. That's where you then really have to find that mental grit and remind yourself, why the heck are you doing this in the first place? You want to build muscle. Your body can take it. Your body could do the next 2 reps. You have to play mind games with yourself to keep yourself in it. Yes, I can do this. Yes, I can do this. One of the things that I do to keep myself in it is reminding myself, where have I been in the past and where do I want to go? I'm doing this because I can do this now. There was a time where a younger version of me never could have done this kind of weight, so I'm going to do it for her. Or there's times where I think about the woman I'm still trying to evolve into, and I'm just like, she can do it. So in order to get to that point and to become that version of myself, I need to dig down deep right now, and I need to, squeeze these reps out so that I can become her. Mental games. And sometimes it's like really not that deep. Sometimes it's just like, count 2 more, Jessie J songs or, just dedicate this to 2 people that I love. Like there's different ways that you can kind of play games with yourself to get those last few reps out. But that's one of those things that you really do have to start playing with when we are in that part, like when you're in that part of the 8 to 12 rep range where it's just like, I don't want to do this, but I know I have to do this if I want to see myself putting on more muscle. You can't always just live at 8 reps. You should be evolving. And it's not that you're necessarily going to evolve every single week. I mean, I've had plenty of times where it's like, I have 4 sets of 4. Not 4 sets of 4. I have 8 sets of 4. I don't have anything else to give. And that lasts for like a month. And then maybe at week 5, it's like, okay, now I have 1 extra rep. I have 3 sets of 8 and 1 set of 9. Okay, that's progress. And that's the thing, like progress sometimes is slow, especially as you become more advanced. The progress is really going to start to slow down, where when you are new in the beginning, you can see some pretty crazy jumps pretty quickly, depending on your program, depending on your form. That's like what happens in swing to snatch. These people are making these insane jumps because they're brand new to the space. But the more advanced you become, the jumps happen less frequently and they are smaller. And that's okay. That's just part of the game of lifting and building muscle and increasing your overall strength. But the big thing to take away here is when you have a good program that is in alignment with the goals and you're thinking to yourself, this isn't hard enough, chances are it's not the program. Chances are it is your form or the weight that you were selecting. And I think for a lot of people, it is uncomfortable to be challenged, and that's why it's really important to understand, what does intensity actually feel like? When I'm working in that 8 to 12 rep range and my body is getting to the point of failure, I'm still feeling all of the right muscles doing the work. But for something like a squat, my legs begin to get shaky. My legs begin to feel kind of like jelly. When I set the weight down, my breathing starts to get really heavy. And the reason my breathing is getting really heavy is because when I'm working in that 8 to 12 rep range, all of the blood is rushing down to my legs. So by the time I am putting the weight down, I now have to repay this oxygen debt. So the weight goes on the floor. I'm breathing heavy because of all of this pulling that has been having to go down towards my lower body. So having that reaction of this heavy breathing afterwards is really good. You know, when you feel like I deserve this 90-second break, or I want this break, I need this break, like those are signals that the weight is heavy enough. If you don't feel like you need to rest for, say, 90 seconds after doing squats in an 8 to 12 rep range, then the weight's probably not heavy enough. Now, the one nuance to this is if you are a beginner and you are learning form, you're getting it into your body, there's a really good chance that the weight probably isn't as heavy as it needs to be for you to truly start seeing yourself build the muscle. But that's because that is not the number one priority. In the beginning, you have to nail good form, because if you have a shaky foundation, you are not going to be able to make the progress that you envision in your head. So once that foundation is locked in, that's when we start to look at the intensity piece. And yeah, it should feel like my legs are heavy. My legs feel like jelly. I'm huffing and puffing when I'm setting the weight down. I need these 90 seconds to rest. If you don't need this break, it's not heavy enough. And then we have to, ask the question, is it because, I'm afraid to go heavier because I'm not locked in with my tension? I'm not locked in with my breath? Is it because I'm afraid of pushing myself that intensely? Or is it that you really just aren't selecting heavy enough weight? Do not underestimate what it takes to learn how to lift well. You have to learn the skill before you can start training to achieve a body that is dangerous and defined. Now, listen, when the weight is heavy enough, and the reason that you're not going heavier has nothing to do with, necessarily your form or being scared. It's just really uncomfortable to be in that state of intensity. You have to remind yourself, what do you want? What do you want? This is very much like that scene in The Notebook with Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams. What do you want? If you want a body that is strong, that is defined, that you feel like you can trust, you have to be okay knowing that you are going to have to get uncomfortable in order to achieve that. What I love about lifting is the fact that you are in a controlled situation where you can back out at any point in time, but you are in a controlled environment where you can get uncomfortable. And it's being willing to get uncomfortable that is going to allow you to challenge yourself to an extent that allows for progress to happen. If you are unwilling to challenge yourself, do not expect this body to appear, because it does not happen for those who are unwilling to challenge themselves. You have to be willing to get uncomfortable. So reminding yourself, why am I doing this? What do I want? Am I actually feeling challenged? We need that to be a part of the conversation in this space in order for you to actually see progress. If you are not being challenged, and listen, not every session, not every day is going to be you having the ability to go ham. And you don't even necessarily need that. Like, you don't need to feel like you're going to throw up. You don't need to feel like I'm not going to be able to sit on the toilet the next day. But the last few reps of all of your sets, it should feel like this is really hard. I can maintain my form. I can do everything right. But maybe you are experiencing the heavy breathing or the jelly-like sensation or this like pooling, this swelling of blood in a particular area that you're working. Those are all good things. And, I have some clients who are actually just like, they say the opposite, not that this is too hard. They'd be like, this is too easy. And I'm just like, well, what are you feeling? What are you experiencing? And they're like freaking masochists. They're just like always looking for more pain, more intensity. And it's like, you don't need to beat yourself into the ground in order to see change, but you do need to pull up your big girl panties and work hard enough that the intensity is going to match whatever it is you are going after. One of the things that I like to remind myself is it's just a moment. I squat once a week on average, and that is always the hardest day for me because it's larger muscles and there's a really big level change. And I just find it to be a challenging exercise to do. But I remind myself, hey, Colleen, This is going to last less than 15 minutes. Less than 15 minutes once a week where you get an opportunity to go into the fire. And you're going to be safe. And if you need to get out of the fire for whatever reason, you can. But this is the moment that is going to help build up your legs more. You're going to get stronger. You're going to see more muscle. You are going to have an opportunity to challenge yourself and choose not to back out of the challenge, but see it dead in the eye and level yourself the fuck up. That is required to see change. Not backing out, going into the fire, picking heavy enough weights, being, in a position where you can let the ego go. And if you are that beginner, like taking the time to embrace being the beginner so that you don't get to the point where it's like, oh, this is too easy. You're like, no, this is plenty challenging. I'm doing the exercise correctly. I have the right tempo. I have the right alignment. I'm feeling all of the right muscles. I can figure out, what the weight selection needs to be so that I am challenged. I always feel bad for people when they're just like, this isn't hard enough. Really? Is it not that it's hard enough? Or are you just like finding ways to, not see it through? Even like if you have something on a timer, I've had clients in the past where like we're doing something like a farmer's hold, and I can never see this if I'm not live with somebody. For a lot of my private clients, if they're not sending me videos, sometimes they don't. They're just telling me what's happening in their spreadsheet. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's look at this live. And I'm like, okay, well, you've been tracking that you've been holding this weight for 30 seconds. But as we're doing it right now, it looks like you can't hold on for 30 seconds. So, what's going on? If you're training something, you just want to be really honest about how long you're lasting, how many reps you're getting, what the weight really is. I had this one client at one point. It was like kind of weird. I think she was tying some worth to the weight that she was moving, because I would ask her occasionally, maybe let's use something like a little bit lighter so we have cleaner form. And she would be like, no, it has to be this. It has to be this. It has to be this. And I'm just like, well, why does it have to be that? Because you're telling me that the goal is building muscle and decreasing body fat. Nobody cares what the weight is. Your body cares that the right muscles are doing the work. And if you are choosing to use something that is too heavy, that is impeding on your form, then you're not going to be able to achieve the goal. And on the flip side, let's say you have really good form, but you are not challenging yourself with something that is heavy enough that makes the end of that movement feel, really tough, then you're not going to achieve the goal. For people that are a little bit more on that side of things, and maybe they're not going heavier because they are scared, the big thing that I always want to say to reassure them is, are you feeling the right muscles? Do you feel your lat engage? Are you feeling your glutes engage? Are you feeling all of the right things? And if the answer is yes, then it's like, okay, well, then I need you to trust yourself that you can handle more. And a lot of the times when it comes to, you can handle more, it's not, let's do more all at once. It's try this weight, see how it feels. What happens if you do it for a couple of reps? Do you feel okay? Okay, then let's continue to go. If at any point in time it feels like I don't want to keep going, then giving permission that you can put the weight down and go back. And I find that with a lot of people who are a little bit nervous to go heavier, that's a really nice approach, instead of being like, everything needs to be heavier right this second, right now. But the big thing I want you to take away from this is, if the goal is building muscle, you have to challenge yourself. You have to challenge yourself with the intensity. But before you can challenge yourself with the intensity, the form has to be there. Because if that fails, the intensity isn't going to matter. And then you're going to become the person who's just like, this isn't hard enough. It's plenty hard. And listen, I can't speak for every single person's training program. I know there are programs out there and it's like, this is shit. But if you have somebody who knows how to program and you are making comments like this isn't hard enough, I'm not going to question anything other than your form first, and then the weight that you are self-selecting. So before you are thinking to yourself, this is way too easy, ask yourself, is this a program that is in alignment with my goals? Is this being programmed from somebody that I trust? Do I actually know how to execute the exercise correctly? Am I actually following the program? And what I mean by that is a workout can feel a lot easier if instead of taking, 90-second rest, you're taking 5-minute rests. And am I actually selecting weights that are challenging enough where I'm able to push myself in the listed rep range to a point where I am feeling challenged? And then based on how all of that goes down, you start to get some answers, and you will most likely come to the conclusion that there might be some things that you need to look at. But most of the time, the program is not the issue. When it's coming from somebody that you trust and it's in alignment with your goals, it comes down to, well, what's going on with your form? Are you actually following the program to a T? And are you choosing weights that are truly challenging? And if you're not, then you need to meet yourself where you're at and focus on whatever it is that needs to be focused on before you can push yourself more. So take that for what it is. Take what serves you, leave what doesn't, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Dangerous Woman podcast. Make sure to leave us a review and subscribe so you never miss an episode.